Okay. Like I have the right view. It's just going to look different than we're used to. Yeah, we are live.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I have to use my onboard computer camera because for some reason my laptop and the camera are not happy with each other at the moment, and I have no idea why. But I'm here, so I can see me, and you can see me, and it's not just going to be
Doesn't
words.
look too bad. The color's a little off, but it's not horrible.
Well, it's close enough.
A little too intense, but yeah.
I turned the contrast way down. Star says hello. Hi, Star. Sacred Reflections says hello, sister. Hi, Sacred Reflections. I'm glad that I'm back. I'm like, wow. Carla says, yay, you guys got it rolling. Yes, we did. Sometimes things just go poof. They just really do.
For no reason.
For no reason that we can discern. Arcanum says, yay. Teresa says, I'm glad it wasn't me. Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't you too. And I keep looking at the camera up above me because I'm used to that instead of the one on board my computer. All right, I'll get used to it. Ian says, welcome to our chat. This is not our usual setup.
So not bad though at all.
No, it works.
The picture looks pretty good on my end. I don't have the full screen, but other than having the
Carla
color
says, Teresa, ha ha, laugh out loud. Yep.
But your blue shows up blue instead of purple. But
yeah.
Still, it's a little purple.
Teresa says, you look lovely, so don't worry. Thank you. I appreciate that. Life. It's just full of all kinds of surprises, isn't it?
Well, I wonder about the computer things that just like break themselves, you know? It's a software glitch of some sort because our camera's working just fine. It just won't work on that computer anymore.
All of a sudden. And then the microphone wouldn't work on yours.
Yeah.
And so who knows? Carla says, looking good on my end, Siofra. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, my onboard, camera is fine. It's just, we get more of a view.
Well, plus we can get that.
Yeah, we can change the
tripod and all
right,
that.
all that jazz. Yeah. Darlene says hello. Hi, darling. So, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that are out there.
Yes.
For those who want to be celebrated and those who don't, that's fine. It's like those who are mothers to other life forms. Happy Mother's Day to you as well.
I know that some people have mothers that were very nice.
And some
I was not one.
Yeah, and we know that there are some who did not.
Kind of ironic. I had a bad mother. She had a bad father.
So between the two of us,
we had one pair of parents.
And that were adequate.
Yep.
Carla says, happy Mother's Day. Thank you, Carla. Teresa says, my surprise this morning was that I didn't program my kiln right last night. I meant to preheat for 28 minutes, but instead preheated for 28 hours.
Yeah.
So I had to clear the program and start it fresh. Wow, that's a lot. That's a much longer time.
A lot of preheating, yep.
Yes, that's a lot of preheating. Erin says, hello. Hi, Erin. Donna says, hi, guys. Siofra, Ian, thank you so much for your help this week. Bless you guys. I didn't know when I asked that you would need to go to Staples. Just thank you. Well, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
I mean, I had to get it to you somehow. And we just don't have a printer in our house anymore. The ink was getting ridiculous if you don't use it often enough.
Yeah, we weren't using our printer often enough, so our ink would dry up. So every single time we'd want to use our printer, the ink would dry up, and we'd have to dry up. We'd have to buy a new cartridge just for one use. It's getting ridiculous.
And it's like $60 to get the cartridges. And I'm like, yeah, no, that makes no sense. It's a lot easier to spend less than $1 to go make a photocopy. So,
yep.
But you're welcome. I was glad to do it for you guys. And I'm hoping that my letter helped. I heard from Luna, and she thanked me too. So this is awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't mind at all. It's one of those things. Apparently my cayenne is starting to come back up my throat.
Drink some water.
This is what I'm going to do. John said, you, Ian, how the hell did you learn to weld in a week? I've done university courses on welding, and my welding sucks.
I didn't say I learned to weld well. I learned well enough to fix our door. I would not call it a good weld, but it seems to be strong enough, so that's the important part. So I think we're good, but yeah. If I was going to weld and somebody else was going to look at it, but this is underneath the fender and stuff where nobody can see it, so I'm not too concerned. But the person who we had over who knows how to weld wasn't used to welding thin material, and I think it would have been worse. So
Yeah.
I did it myself, but I think it turned out okay. The door works well, so.
Teresa says, I thought you don't like peppers. I don't. I don't like peppers at all, but I'm taking some cayenne supplements. I'm trying to see if I can get my body temperature back to normal. I dipped down to 94.3 on Wednesday, and that's a dangerously low body temperature. So I'm hoping that taking some capsicum during the day is going to help increase the blood flow and stuff like that, and get that taken care of. I don't know. It's just an experiment at this point. I used to take it when I lived up north because it helps to prevent frostbite and so forth because it increases your production of blood vessels, the smaller capillaries and things like that in your hands and your feet. That was one of the solutions that we had from when we lived up north. I thought I'd give it a try. It's only been the second day, so we'll see. Gabrielle says, hi, everyone. Hi, Gabrielle. Carla says, Siofra, the grid, oh my goodness. You know how you can see columns of light from a big city when it's misty? The big peaks of light? That's how I saw it. Awesome. Gabrielle says, yikes. And Teresa says, maybe Reiki could help. I don't know. I don't know if Reiki would help this or not. I've been doing some self-Reiki. I have, a strange body. We all have something we have to deal with. It's like, however good we might be at whatever it is that we're doing, there's always some kind of a challenge that we have to try and figure out.
Yep.
And that seems to be the case in my family. I've been dealing with the spasms that I have for 20 plus years now, I think.
Yeah.
So
unfortunately.
Yeah, and there's no treatment that works on me at all. So that's why the valerian root. And I don't know if this is related or not. Yeah, it was not fun though. But the last 2-3 nights now, I've been able to sleep really well. So I've sort of recovered from the lack of ability to sleep. So my mind is working, at least. But thank you for the thought. Yeah, it's just like, Donald says, that's awesome, Ian. I'm glad you were successful. Do you have one of those inverter arc welders? I need one of those. It's if for nothing else than just to make magical tools. I want to make a sickle.
Yeah, this was an inexpensive one. We got it we got it a couple of years ago, I think. I think it was about $80 or something off the internet.
I don't remember now.
One and, yeah.
Yeah, and we had to buy a really super long cord to go from the 220 outlet in the back of the house to the front of the house to where the car was so that he could use it. Yeah. So it was going to cost us the same amount of money to
the cord
to
almost cost as much as the welder.
Yeah, and it is heavy duty. It's funny. I was telling a client about it. She says, "Couldn't you have borrowed an extension cord from someone?" And I'm like, not that kind. Yeah. These are not your average household extension cords. They do not work that way." But she's always trying to be helpful, coming up with new ideas and other ways of thinking about things and so forth. So it's like part of her personality. She also is she's an attorney and a district attorney. And I learned years ago when I was working on her regularly that if I told her any of my dreams, she would interrogate my dream. And she would start asking me questions. What was he wearing? How tall was he? What did he look like? And I'm like, I wasn't witnessing a crime in person. It was a dream. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have any more details than what I can tell you. The different grooves that we have in our head are fascinating to me because we all have some of them, things that are familiar to us, things that are more common, things we think about all the time, pet peeves or whatever they might be. And most of us, if you know a person's trigger phrase, you can say it and then they'll go off on a rant in whatever direction that particular groove happens to be in. I see it with my daughter. I see it with other people. I'm sure I have some as well. Donald says, that's really cool. I've only ever used my dad's old oil welder. thing weighs about as much as I do.
Yeah. Yeah, this thing is pretty small. It's more or less portable. I carry it around with one hand, so not too big of a deal. Yeah, unlike I've seen those big old ones. They're huge.
So Teresa says, from the internet, new research has found that a nutritional supplement called L-carnitine might one day be used as a way to jumpstart the body's central heating. Okay, we'll check it out. We're on a bunch of different supplements at the moment. I don't think we're on that one though.
Yeah, I've seen it advertised, but I know nothing about it.
And of course, with anything, I have to be careful when I use it because my body is weird and how it reacts to things. So, but yeah, we'll see. I guess we'll find out how that B12 supplement I bought works on me. I think I'm okay with the straight B12s. Some of the Bs I have a hard time absorbing. But yeah, life is a challenge. What can I say? Suddenly it was not as windy as it was when we first got out here. Like calmed down briefly at least. Our weather is pretty good though. And we got some yard work done yesterday. So that was nice to get out in the yard and do some playing with the plants, trying to free up the space for my bulbs who are kind of upset about all the wild onions growing in between them. They don't really like them very much. Because it says the purple shows more true on your camera. Yeah, well, it doesn't matter whatever color I'm wearing. Just is. But anyhow, we certainly had a good full moon. For those of you who didn't participate, I have put the link up on the YouTube channel as well as my Facebook page, so you can use it if whenever you're where the moon is and it's dark out. So we got it done before the full moon, which is officially early tomorrow morning my time, so it's going to be definitely tonight for a lot of people. I considered that it was close enough to that to try and get it activated, and we had a good time starting to add the different crystal caverns and stuff. We started off with the one in Scotland, and I talked to a man from Ireland the other day on Friday, and he told me that there's reputedly a bunch of amethysts inside the Hill of Tara, which is by where he lives. And so we're going to see about adding that particular cavern of amethysts to the crystal web as a specific node to keep activating those things. I found it was interesting. It was a interesting conversation I had with him. And I like that I can have conversations with people I've never met in person, and just pretty cool. Hear other people's perspectives on things. Jano says, I'm looking at the full moon right now while I have my tobacco. It's pretty tonight. Awesome. So after this is over, you can click onto the amethyst crystal web and just take off with it. Add some more stuff to it. Why not? Shay says, hello all. Hi, Shay. Gabrielle says, I slept with an amethyst next to me last night. I felt a difference. Teresa says, can you explain how we are creating nodes? Well, we're just sort of specifically targeting locations on the planet that we know are known locations of crystal caverns and things, and consciously adding them to the network. I think they're already connected, but this is to sort of heighten that activity and the energy they're in. So it's all happening in our heads on the other planes. Carlos says, I follow something called the Coimbra protocol. It's a high-dose D3 magnesium glycinate, vitamin B50. I need a lot. And a couple of cofactors like K2 and zinc. I can only attest to it being beneficial with MS, but it's helpful for many other conditions too. Yeah, there's probably stuff in there that I can't take, but magnesium certainly was one of my first things I did for the muscle spasms. It's not enough. It tests normal. It doesn't seem to be enough. Trevor says, greetings from Ireland. Great meeting you the other day, Siofra. Hi, Trevor. I was just talking about you and the Hill of Tara and what we're going to be doing next month. So, welcome. It must be pretty late there. Gabrielle says, I also did your aura protection meditation. It actually worked. I'm going to work on that a few times a day until I get it down.
Yeah, and of
Awesome.
course, the more you practice those things, the more effective they get.
And the stronger
Yeah.
stronger the results and the quicker
Yeah.
the results too. Yeah, so awesome. Good. That's why I put that up there for you guys. Because that was one of the things everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people were asking for. And, you know, me trying to figure out what it is I'm doing that I've just naturally grown into doing. You know, it's just like, yeah. Trevor says, thank you. I look forward to it. Yes. And I guess I shall see you on Monday, Trevor. Jay says, welcome, Trevor. Yeah, so I like the fact that you guys want me to figure out how to do it so that I can share it because it's so automatic for me. It's hard for me to take it apart and figure out what are the steps that I took in order to get it that way. So, you know, for me, it's like I'm a seed with a flower and it grows and it becomes whatever it is. And then to figure out how to tell someone what it is. So it was a good challenge. I had to really sit and think about it and whatnot. Carla says, right, Gabrielle? I did it right before sleep and it was fantastic. Cool. I like the fact that some of the things that I share help other people. That's kind of the whole point.
Well, that's, yeah, exactly it.
Yeah.
That is the whole point. Yeah.
That is the whole point of why I'm doing this in the first place. It's like, but I really like the whole, you know, using the crystal web as a sort of a sanctuary, energetic sanctuary for us while the rest of this insanity is going on around us. And I think it should be very helpful to our psyches, our energy, our state of mind, and so forth, and allow us to absorb some of that joy, peace, and tranquility that we're activating in the amethyst web to start with. So, Teresa says, I came across a video where a guy said that being in the astral realm looks like being in a dark filter. What's your experience? Depends on what part of the astral I'm in. I mean, the dark, when I was in the astral, it was not dark at all. When I was just out of my body in my bedroom, I could actually see more than, see, I could see almost, I can see farther around me than my eye peripheral vision, where peripheral vision is, you know, like about there. Astral vision is like back here, and there's just a small section behind my head that I couldn't see, and everything was much more clear and distinct. I could even see motes of dust in the air. Everything was crystal clear. So no, the gray part that I came across was when I went to the part of the astral where spirits are stuck. What they see when they're you know between lives and earthbound and so forth, and it's kind of this gray amorphous sort of environment, and that's why they find us, is, you know, people like us, because we put out a light and they can see the light and they're drawn to the light, and so they're drawn to clairvoyance and so forth, because it's one of the things that impacts them. And the reality is there are so many different astral, not different astral planes, but different places in the astral plane, and every one of them is unique.
Not only that, but everybody has a different amount of sensibility and ability to see things on the astral, and it has to do with how developed you are.
That too.
You know, except in rare instances, I can't purposely see anything on the astral mostly. If I see something, it's on the middle plane.
Well, right. This was a time when I popped out of my body, and it was in the night. It was at nighttime that I popped out. I was only out for, I don't know, a few seconds really in real time, and considering the fact that it was fully dark in the room, it wasn't dark when I was out. I mean, there's a light that goes through everything. That's through everything, and that's like the universal light or whatever is the, I don't know, the fabric or of the universe, and it's composed of that. And so when you're not in the physical body and limited by physical eyeballs and so forth, and there's a different kind of vision. And the other thing was feeling the cold air going through my spirit. It was a very strange sensation. But that wasn't a mental plane thing. I could see my body down on the bed, and I was floating around above it, kind of thing. So that was just a full on, astral out of body experience. Carla says, divine workings, Miss Siofra. Yes. Shay says, thank you, Siofra, for deconstructing your magical abilities for our benefit. You're welcome. Donna says, yeah, Siofra, I reckon it's difficult for you to articulate some of the stuff you do, like when we ask you how you cross over ghosts or anything else. It's like, I just do it, and there aren't words. This is true. It's hard to explain. Keith says, hello, Siofra. Hi, Keith. And Carla says, I can only see the peripheral shadows when I'm just about to fall asleep. I see those at night as soon as it gets dim out. But yeah. I mean, it's like everything. Everyone's sight and vision is going to be different. We're different in physical bodies. We're going to be different in our spirit bodies, too. It's like, and like Ian said, depending on your level of ability and development and so forth, is going to make a big impact on what exactly you see. The thing is that what this person said is probably true for that person, but they may be jumping to a conclusion that all of the astral looks that way. And that's one of the dangers of coming to conclusions instead of allowing yourself to have the experience and then looking at the experience and going, okay, so that's what I experienced. It doesn't necessarily follow that just because you have that experience that, one, everyone else is going to have that experience, or two, that that's the only experience you can have, unless that's what you decide is the facts. So yeah, like there's lots of stuff out there that people say is real and true and may or may not be, depending on who they are. But yeah, it is hard to try and figure out how to explain it. But I try. I really do. It's like, it's not as straightforward for me as like an athlete or something who's learning a specific skill, or a musician, who has a discipline that they do that is step by step that anyone could follow. Teresa says, related question, how do you block someone's astral body from coming into your space? Well, you put up a do not disturb sign around your environment that is specifically targeted to anyone coming in that's not invited. If you do that specifically, you say only invited spirit beings are allowed to cross this barrier, and if they try to cross this barrier, I will know, and an alarm will go off, or they will be repelled. So it's a matter of how you phrase it. You have to give specific instructions to the universe. I mean, I know when we had that witch north of us who was insistent that she was going to be able to keep track of everything I did for the rest of existence because she had taught us a few things that we already knew once. And when we left her completely, I put up that do not disturb sign specifically for her. And she tried in the astral plane, she tried in the mental plane, she tried in the dream state, and every time she tried, I knew she was there, and I reiterated that she had no permission, she wasn't allowed, she needed to leave, and eventually she stopped trying. I don't think she was able to try in the Akasha. So, Pickle says, yeah, her level of skill, I don't think, went that far. Otherwise, she would have known that we weren't evil.
Yeah.
Seriously, that was very disappointing to discover how unenlightened she actually was to not be able to tell magically what we were doing.
She puts herself forth as a spiritual teacher.
Yes.
Yeah, she had no idea clearly.
Yeah, so Ickle says, hello, happy Sunday. Sorry I'm late. Hi, Ickle. You're here. That's an important thing. Carla says, I was telling the hubs that you're the best, hands down, at explaining how to call the elementals. Hands down, the best. Thank you. I'm so happy. Star says, what is your opinion on sleep paralysis versus demon or spirit encounter attack? It's tricky because, sleep paralysis is a real thing that can happen. And it's like you're having a dream while you're awake, but you're still paralyzed. Your body and brain hasn't stopped paralyzing your body. Because without that ability to like paralyze your muscles and so forth, we'd all be running down the street in the middle of the night in whatever dream we were in, doing all kinds of stuff, and maybe harming ourselves. So there is definitely that is a real phenomenon, and when you wake up in it and you can't move, it's frightening because you suddenly feel like you're stuck and you have no control because you're awake but your body is still paralyzed and you're still in part of a dream state, so you can see things superimposed with your open eyes and actually see dream images and so forth, and the fear that that generates usually makes those images negative. So I think that it is a real thing. Yeah, so demon or spirit encounters or attacks, I think, are more likely to be real if you're awake at the time when they happen rather than when you're asleep, as far as it goes. But it doesn't mean that that can't happen, depending on what kind of activities you're doing during the day and your level of self-defense and your energy and all this other stuff. Teresa says he came when we were doing the Zoom meeting, spying on it. Hard to deal with it in the moment. So annoying. I'm sorry. Gabrielle says, yeah, that's kind of an egomaniac to violate boundaries like that. Wow.
Oh, yeah, he violates the wrong persons at some point. He might get blasted out of his socks.
Julia says, smiles as she takes her seat once more. Hello, everyone. Hi, Julia. Donna says, Star, I've had sleep paralysis twice in my life. First time scared me. Second time I told myself what was happening and I got out of it. Both times were purely mundane physical things. There was no spiritual aspect to it. And yeah, and I think that that is usually the case in general. I'm so glad that I don't, most of us don't have the sleepwalking problems that that one comedian has. That poor man. He has to be tied into a mummy bag and have his hands covered so he can't undo the bag while he's asleep, because the first time he discovered he had this issue, he actually walked out of his room and through a plate glass window at a hotel and then woke up after he fell into the glass. So, yeah, there's a lot of different states we can be in, chemistry and stuff like that. So you have to figure out how to deal with it. Tracy says, sleep paralysis sucks. I hate it. Thankfully, it hasn't happened for a while. I get it every so often because I'll know that something's happening and I'm trying to wake up and I can't move, and then I force myself to move. If I can move anything at all, then it breaks it, and then I'm back completely in my body. But I don't care for it. I don't think anybody actually likes it when it happens. I've not heard of anyone liking it, that's for sure. But it doesn't mean that you're being psychically attacked or spiritually attacked or people are sending demons at you or any of that other stuff necessarily. So, one of those things. Certainly happens to enough people that we know it's a widespread kind of experience that's out there. But yeah, I don't care for it. When I had that thing happen to me when I was attacked, I was awake before it started. So I knew it wasn't sleep paralysis, and I, was awake throughout the entire experience when I had that thing shove me down on my mat on my bed and try to get into my body. And that was definitely an attack of some kind, but I repelled it by being able to move for one thing, and being refusing to cooperate and being certain that it couldn't do it. So, yeah. That was pretty spectacular. If I hadn't already woken up before I moved, I would wonder if that had been sleep paralysis because of the fire and everything else that I saw. It was pretty strange. But that kind of thing never happened again. And I've talked to other people that have had similar experiences, so who knows. And Gabriel says, yeah, people need to read into the sleep paralysis phenomenon too much. I see, yeah. We like to interpret things and come up with narratives. John Starr says, my experience was supernatural and frightening. I was awake and paralyzed and forced myself out of it and then felt my bed depress as if something sat down. Yeah, with mine, when the thing was pushing on me, trying to get into my body, it actually made the springs in my mattress start to creak. So I was really being pressed down. It was a physical thing. John says, encounters of the third kind, being hag-ridden, it's always been a part of the human experience. Very scary if you don't understand what's happening to you. Teresa says, once something caused my mother to levitate in her bed. How would that happen? No idea. Some really powerful poltergeist phenomenon? Mohegan Link says, exactly, my dear Siofra. I'm a traveler too. Nice to see you again. Hi, Mohegan. Sarah says, yes, I was being held down. Yeah, and that's a different kind of thing when it does that. Carla says, I had it probably twice, once as a kid, and it scared me because I could hear the commercials on the TV in the living room and couldn't call out to my parents. It felt like I was levitating. And I saw, as we wait with bated breath to see what she saw, the ceiling inches from my nose. Oh, I had that happen when I was sick with the measles. Yeah. I kept going up to the ceiling and like inches, and then way down into the bed, going back and forth between being really close to the ceiling and being far away on the bed in the middle of my mother's giant bed, because I was pretty small. I think I was about 4 when I had the measles. But yeah, that's kind of, I mean, the human experience is just amazing and varied and sometimes frightening and confusing and interesting and all that other stuff that goes along with it. Like, and everyone is so different. What works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another, and something we all have to remember. So, yeah, we do what we can, and getting other perspectives from other people's experience can help us to kind of, I don't know, wrap our narrative in a slightly different cloak so that it's not as frightening in some cases. Yeah. Carla says, when it broke, I ran out crying, and Dad said, you were so relaxed you couldn't move. Julia says, I must say that shade of purple is absolutely regal and stunning on you, Shifa. Thank you. I had someone comment on it when I worked to the store the other day. I had on my purple fedora that I got for Christmas and this shirt, and I was walking down the grocery aisle, and a woman walked by and she says, you look absolutely fabulous in that purple. Look at you. I said, thank you very much. It was a lovely little exchange. I was like, well, that was delightful. Much nicer than getting yelled at. Carla says he was right in the simplified version. Gabrielle says, I almost got abducted by aliens and said, no, I'm a sovereign being. And they put me back in my body. Donna says, I had measles as a kid, but I live in the third world, so that makes sense. It would have been so good if we could talk about it as if it was something from the past. Even polio is making a comeback. I'm sorry. And it is a sad and true thing that seems to be happening. The measles outbreak here is just ridiculous. Teresa says, I was hoping you'd wear your fedora sometime. Yeah, but then you couldn't see my gorgeous face. I'd be wearing a hat. But hey, it's a nice fedora. I like purple. It's my favorite color. What can I say? So I run out in the world wearing amethyst and being my purple self. Gabrielle says, the first part of the experience, I was in a trance and felt compelled to accept what was happening. Then my free will kicked in and I was like, nope. That's it. You got to express that free will. And being a sovereign being, you have the natural authority to say no to whatever. You don't have to cooperate. Kicking and screaming. No, no, no. Ella says, good for you, Gabrielle. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. You want to keep that. Carla says, the second time was recently, within the past couple of years, and it was the same type of thing, only this time I loved it. Well, it does help when you're not afraid of it, right? So that's good. I still don't care for it. I like to be more in control, but at least it doesn't happen that often. Bodies are funny. Rose says it definitely helps. Yeah, I mean, the stories that we tell our brain can really shape how we experience the world around us, because if we think that, there's evil and icky stuff and out to get us and looking for to harm us and so forth, it becomes a sort of a interpretive self-fulfilling prophecy in that sense. And I was thinking about this the last couple of days. Like, a lot of people have this notion that becoming magical and getting abilities and so forth means that life won't throw you any curveballs and everything will always be exactly how you want it. But in reality, that's not the case. It's like life still happens. There's still challenges, things that don't go the way you want because other people live here. It's just annoying. I wish, if we were by ourselves, everything would be great as far as that went. But he does give you more tools to figure out how to deal with situations. It's sort of like an extra set of tools that you have available to you to figure out how to cope and how to get out of the way of something that is too big for you to avoid, or walk around something that's just slightly annoying, all that stuff. Gabrielle says, maybe that experience was to help me stand up for myself. I don't think ETs are bad, but I'm an individual and need more information before I go flying around in their ship. Yeah. Carla says, there was some control because I was imagining floating all over the room and was tingly all over. It didn't last long enough. Gabrielle says, not my idea of a coffee date, aliens. Teresa says, can you explain how elementals are carriers of thought and how they influence thought forms? Okay, I've been thinking on this question because you've asked it a couple of times, and I think what you're talking about is the time that Ian and I used the elements to send a thought to somebody. And we didn't send an elemental. We used the elements themselves as transistor kind of.
Well,
It goes into the element
yes, I
and
mean,
travels with it.
For example, if you want to affect somebody, say with the earth element, because the earth element is good for healing, for example. So what you can do is charge up a potato or an apple, something like that. A potato is better because it's specific earth attributes. So you're going to use the earth element. So you even fill that potato with the earth element itself, and then you charge it however you want, and it's going to react something like this. Like if you knew the person worked in their garden or something, so it'd be like every time they would touch any aspect of the earth element, they would be healed, something like that. And then you charge a potato that way, and you bury the potato in the ground, and then that will have that influence, will go out through the earth element, and then whenever they contact the earth element, it will affect them. Okay, you can do the same thing. You can do it with fire element. You can do it with, if you want to do the air element, you can put it a little bit of fluid condenser and charge it up, put it into a plate and charge that up, and then you let it evaporate into the air, and you charge it up with the idea that whenever the person contacts the air element in any fashion, which of course they're constantly breathing and moving in the air element, then it will affect them with that aspect. But you just want to make sure that whatever aspect you put into it is appropriate for the element you're using. So for love, you'd want to use water, of course. For, you know, uh, if you want somebody to be enlightened, for example, with a certain idea or a certain enlightenment of an idea or something like that, you would probably use the air element because that has to do with the intellect. You use the earth element for physical body things and healing and maybe, things of that nature, people walking. It has a particular aspect to walking around. So depending on what you're doing, you use the appropriate element, and then you can put that into it through either evaporation for like water and fire. You charge it up into a piece of paper, like put some fluid condenser on a paper towel, and you put your charge on that, and then you burn it in the fire, and then whenever they have contact with the fire element, and that doesn't mean, that means any source of heat, sunlight, anything like that, it'll enter them fire element, so you make it appropriate the appropriate thing in which element's appropriate for it, and charge it up and put it into that element. Water, you can dump it into, Barton recommends flowing water like a creek or a river or something.
And we once used, we had like a, we had a member who was leaving the area, and we had lent her a bunch of our videos and books. And she was going to go away, and she kept forgetting to bring them back. And
moving
so,
like to another state or something, like
yeah,
a long ways
a
away.
long ways away.
Yeah.
And so we used the elements to send her the message, like,
Get us our books back.
give us our books back, give us our videos back. And we did all 4 elements. And it was funny. It's like, I think it was less than a day.
Yeah.
About a day later,
fast,
she
yeah.
came to our door and she says, here's all your stuff. Please stop telling me. So she was getting it from every location.
Yeah. And not everything happens that fast. Sometimes it can take a long time because it depends on what you're dealing with. But, you know, potatoes are good for healing the body, things like that.
Okay, so Jonna says there's a trick for hiccups that also works for sleep paralysis. In that moment, tell yourself, no, I don't have hiccups or sleep paralysis. 100% success rate, but no refunds. Teresa says, Ian, this topic would make a great workshop video.
Yeah, I've been thinking of doing more on my understanding of elements. It's really easy to just parrot Barton stuff, but if I put something out, I want it to be a little more of something, of course, along the lines of Barton stuff, but different. You know, that's with respect to my understanding of things, because everybody has an individual understanding, and then that'll be just another source rather than just point people at the Barton's books. So yeah, I've been thinking about doing something very like that, and they'll have another source that says the same thing in different words. You know.
Okay, so, and Gabriel says, do guardian angels have an etheric body, or are they only on the mental plane? No, I don't think they're only on the mental plane. I think they exist beyond the planes. I think we might encounter them more on the mental plane.
I can tell you what Barton says, but let's make a. We're talking about one particular aspect. We need to make sure we're talking the same thing when you say guardian angels. So the ones Barton talks about are the ones you can make contact with and will teach you as if you had your own personal guru. So better than having your own personal guru to teach you things. Those guardian angels, which according to Barton, they are the guardian angels that people talk about in general because they're assigned by divine providence. They're assigned to you at birth. They help you when you're a child, even though you're not aware of them. Those ones live in the zone girdling the earth, or as people would put it, could put it, on the astral plane. But you can contact them mentally. But they're way far away from they're in the earth zone, but way far away from the earth. So if you want to travel to contact them and you're capable of astral or mental travel, you need to leave the earth and travel way up way up and keep going up until the earth is simply a tiny little star you can barely see as a pinprick at your feet, that far into the zone girdling the earth, and then call into them, or focus on having yourself brought closer to your guardian angel. And so that's a way to contact them directly. And Barton gives another means in his books where you're using a pendulum and eventually a planchette, and eventually like a Ouija board thing with a planchette where you have letters and numbers, and then you ask them questions and they communicate with you in the same fashion as before. Those ones that are made to be your guru and your protector as a child, those specific beings are in the zone girdling the earth. But it's not at all certain that everybody who says guardian angel means the same thing. Because I'm pretty convinced that when Crowley is talking about that, he means more like the higher spirit or the higher self in a lot of his writings. So you have to make sure we're talking apples and apples.
Right. But the question is, do guardian angels have an etheric body, or are they only in the mental plane? I think the answer is they have their own body.
Well, and if they're in the zone girdling the earth, yeah, mental body, astral body, and you could eventually, actually, that's, never mind. I don't want to confuse the issue by adding
Okay.
too much into it. Sometimes you can have too much knowledge and then you just confuses people in a bunch of gobbledygook.
So Jay Dan says, how often are you live on YouTube? Every Sunday at
Yep.
2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time for an hour and a half. Today I started a little late because my camera wasn't working and had to go to my onboard camera. Gabrielle says, laugh out loud, that's funny. John says, I believe our highest selves, guardian angels, Buddhas, etc., all exist in the Akasha, and the Akasha permeates through all planes.
Well, that's true, but that's kind of, since everything exists in the Akasha originally and everything is in potential, that's kind of like,
A non-answer answer?
Actually, yeah, it's not really saying too much. The Akasha does permeate through all planes. Keep in mind the zone girdling the earth is permeated by the Akasha, and that is how it forms. And in that sense, as they've always said, as above, so below, or the highest is in the lowest, or God is even in the lowest things of earth, all the same way of saying the same thing, that the Akasha penetrates all, including the zone girdling the earth, and in fact is a density degree of the Akasha. The zone girdling the earth is a density degree of the Akasha. Get off the earth's surface itself. So that's very true. These particular ones have a mental, and I gather an astral. If not, they would have to, but to cause a physical effect, they'd have to do it the same way a magician would through the electromagnetic fluid or something like that, if that's anything useful to anybody. But I'd say they have a mental body and an astral body, if we're talking about the same thing, because I think a lot of people confuse what is termed the higher self with the guardian angel. And I believe from reading Barden and others that they're not the same, though I think especially a lot of Western magicians mistake them as being the same thing, and they're not. Your higher self can function as a guru to you and has more to do with your third eye awakening. You can contact your guardian angel and stuff without necessarily having that third eye awakening that causes you to see what is actually termed your internal guru, but it's more like your higher self. So it's a different thing than the guardian angel, in my opinion.
Gabrielle says, wow, mind blown. And Carla says, funny, the pendulum is what I started with. I work with them differently than Barden, but similar. They'll ring my ear. Cicada-like tinnitus. I get that. Definitely.
Yeah, well, that's Barton is working up towards a specific way of doing it, which you get up to. It's either the 5th or the 6th degree of his first book, where you get in contact with your guardian angel. One of the two.
There's so many different life forms.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that's the only way to work with them, of course. That's just simply what Barden has found for his students to be the easiest step-by-step method to go from not having any contact to having contact. In general.
Getting used to the idea.
Well, there's all kinds of ways of getting in contact, but his gives you a step-by-step method to do that. But like everything else, I certainly wouldn't be, there's certainly hundreds of thousands of methods. Barden gives a good one, but I'm sure there are lots of others that are very effective depending on your purpose, though. I have read and heard about a number of people trying to do the Abramelin ritual, which is a ritual to contact your guardian angel that was published by Mathers sometime in the past from an ancient document. I think the reason that one has never been effective that I know of for anybody who's ever tried it, and I think the reason is because it was published openly and not kept private over time. I feel that sucked all the power out of the ritual, having been published since 1900s or something. But it still makes for very interesting reading on the subject. Anyway.
Jono says, cool, we found a point of contention. It helps me figure out my beliefs when this happens. I think the Fae exist in astral and don't have bodies in mental or Akasha. Not everything is in Akasha. Well, everything that exists is
Well, it
Akaja.
has Akaja in it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. It's like Akaja is like the memory of all time and all space in the entire universe. Everything that's ever happened, every thought that's ever happened, everything that's ever existed, and so forth. So, in that level, it's like everything that exists is imprinted into the Akaja. That doesn't mean that they have Akaja as the spirit energy that we talk about when we talk about the element. Um, so there's like two different ways of in talking about the Akasha, and that could be part of it there too. So Carlos says, does he use a seal by chance again?
And I'm going to answer that with a question mark because I don't understand your question. Does who use a seal?
Barden used a
Barden?
seal to contact the guardian angel. That's my
Oh,
assumption.
well, um, you certainly could, but you'd need to get in this case and with Barden's case because of the way you contact him, you would ask the guardian angel to give you the seal to contact them easily. But for the original contact, no. To put it in a short thing, what he does is, okay, consider that he expects you to have gone through the first chapters of his book by that point, and he's taught you these things previously. But what you do is you learn to levitate your finger, you learn to levitate your arm, you learn to move your mental body out of your arm. Okay, so you take your mental body, you move the mental aspect of your arm out of your arm, and allow your guardian angel to, so to speak, just possess that one arm. You have to be able to levitate it so that the willpower can affect it only. You have to be able to move your arm only by willpower and your fingers only by willpower to start with, no muscle strength. Once you can accomplish that, you ask your guardian angel to take over your arm and tap your fingers for yes or no, and then you use that to, you use the pendulum and you use other things, and that's how you get to using the planchette. But you have to have the ability to move your mental body out of your arm and the ability to, you build up your willpower through a specific exercise that he gives you used to build up your willpower enough so that you can levitate your arm without using muscle strength, and then your guardian angel basically takes control of your arm, and you can end up with automatic writing and things like that. So, at which point your guardian angel could write you the seal. But that's the method he uses. But there's also the idea of clairvoyantly contacting your guardian angel. You can contact your guardian angel through a magic mirror, through an Akashic mirror, things like that. Many other methods, but that's just the one that he uses as being the easiest for the people who are starting in his system to perform.
So Teresa says, do you think there is a network of portals that spirits can navigate to interact with different planes?
I don't think they need them.
Yeah, I mean, the mirror certainly is one you can create on your own. You can create a portal for them to use to get into the room where you are if you want to. But
yeah,
I don't
and
think.
It depends, because it depends what the spirit is, because many of them can't navigate to other planes. Like, for example, a water elemental or a fire elemental, they're stuck in the fire element. They can't navigate over to the water element or the earth element without being destroyed. They're stuck in their one element. So, the different planes, and they're stuck in the zone girdling the earth. And they cannot go beyond that to the other planes no matter what. So,
Depends on their nature.
it depends a lot on the nature of the being. If you're talking the higher light beings that can navigate to different planes, and deceased people who have magical ability that can travel in different planes and things, but not a lot of them can't. They're just restricted to their own plane. A lot of them are simply like single element or whatever, depending on what beings you're talking about. There's
Right.
so many.
There are so many. Like the planet Earth. We've got lots of different
Yeah.
creatures of all kinds, and in amongst each one of them, there's specialties and stuff like that. I mean, like finches, the different kinds of beaks they have,
So
depending on their food source.
I don't really think there is any network of portals like that, and I don't think they're needed, and it's easy enough. It's easy enough to make your own with making a magic mirror like we described with some of Barden's fluid condenser or myself. I use a semi-clear amethyst that I like to travel into. Since the amethyst represents the Akaja, that lets me travel to any place. If you have an Akaja aspect or you charge up your magic mirror with Akaja, that works as a portal to all planes and all beings and things. And I like going mental travel. I go into my little amethyst crystal, and since it represents the Akaja, I can go into any plane I want from there, or even contact a being that I don't know what plane it belongs on, since you can do that with the Akaja. I There's spirit beings mentioned in certain books that aren't, you don't know what plane they're on or what have you. You can do that, and like I say, I travel through amethyst crystal because it works for it. Yeah. I don't know if that clears anything up. But.
Well, the other thing too is that a human being who's a medium becomes a portal in the sense as well. So, for them to talk to and communicate with and interact with us on this plane, and that in itself is a whole different ballgame. Gabrielle says, I can't recognize my angels or guides. It seems I'm just around a lot of fae and elemental energy, so it's probably to ground me for emotional work so I can focus enough to eventually be in the mental plane. Jono says, nah, Barton uses a pendulum and an empty glass.
Which is true. That's what he uses to start with for the planchette and empty shot glass type of thing. Yeah.
Carla says, this appeals to me. I'm going to have to save up for his books. Thank you, Ian. Jono says, Carla, his printed books are crazy expensive. The copyright on his books expired. It's all legal and free on a simple Google search. You might save money printing and binding initiation to Hermetics yourself.
Yeah, I think initiation into Hermetics is a paperback book. Last time I looked was something like $40 or something, which is a lot of money for a standard book that size. And it's probably more now because that was about 10 or 15 years ago. I looked at that and it was like $40 at the time. So, yep, download it.
Teresa says, a spirit guide I work with popped into my mind through a portal that seemed to be an opening from a network of tunnels that possibly connected to other people and planes.
Maybe that particular spirit guide has his own system of portals or something.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Jay says, what does the 7-pointed fairy star represent? Depends on what people think. They've assigned meanings to each of the stars, but basically 7-pointed star is the symbol for Venus as well as for the Fae. And so, it's like it's an adopted symbol. I'm not sure how ancient it is as far as how it relates specifically to the Fae. I bought myself a fairy star because I liked it.
And Barton uses it in general to represent just the number 7. And that implies Venus, and that implies the sphere of Venus on the tree of life that's called Netzach, and all the aspects of that, and the beings of Venus and all that. And like I say, I don't know anything about the fairy aspects, but the meaning of it, as far as the Hermetic meanings, is very clear. And it's also a number of divine grace. This is part of what I wanted to make some copper talismans, which I'll eventually get around to for a divine blessing talisman, because it's also the sphere just above the mental sphere. The middle sphere is in number 8. The astral is in number 9, and the physical world is number 10. So number 7 represents, in a little bit of an abstract sense, the spiritual directly above the mental plane. So the direct spiritual ascent, so you can get some spiritual grace and blessings from that, from the number 7, the green, the Netzach sphere. And of course, if you want to use it for love magic, that'd be the ideal figure to put on a talisman for love magic, because love is also associated to Venus.
So I think with symbols like that, it depends on why you're wearing it and how you associate with it as to what it's going to do as far as that goes. Carla says, thanks, Jono. I'll DL the PDF and see about getting it printed at some point. Shay says, lucky number 7.
Yes, you're exactly right, Shay. It is associated with the lucky number 7, and part of that is why. And this divine blessing from grace, and grace that you can get from this, can also lead to riches and wealth on the physical plane. That's part of the reason I want to make them for us, at least, and make a video on it, but I've got to get around to doing it. I've had I've been spending so much time on working on the car lately. I haven't had time to do
Vehicles
anything
like
else.
crazy. Lisa's
Yeah.
now working, yay, and the
Yeah.
door's functional, yay, and we can use it, yay.
Yeah.
Gabrielle says, I heard you, if you stare at a mirror for an hour, you'll start to see your past lives or see your essence or true feelings. I tried it and didn't recognize myself after a
Yeah,
while,
it's very interesting, isn't it?
but started to recognize a happy, mischievous side of myself that was
Yeah.
very nice to meet.
I get all kinds of different faces that don't look like me when I do that. I don't know that what they mean. I haven't got any feeling of a past life memory or anything from it, but it's very interesting to try and can be freaky to some people. Come out.
Well, yeah.
Your face changes into something else, and you're
Well,
seeing some
especially
other
depending on what
face,
kind
yeah.
of weird things they have in their unconscious about, or in their subconscious about what that might mean.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, I'm a demon, I'm being possessed, or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, it can be very startling for people, for some people. Carla says, just don't do it on psychedelics. Gabrielle, yeah, no kidding. That's a bad idea. Gabrielle says, my essence is basically on Earth for a fun time. Now I understand more about why I attract fairies. Yeah, apparently you and me both, because I attract fairies like nobody's business. And, you know, the seven-pointed star for the fairy star, I just thought it was such a marvelous little thing. And I actually bought myself one last year since I have so many encounters with them. But I had plenty of encounters with them before I ever saw or heard of a fairy star. So I don't think it's like a necessary component to working with the fae. It's just like a way I kind of honor the whole notion when I'm wearing it. So.
And who knows? You know, I don't know enough about fairies. Maybe there's some ancient association, but
Yeah, because a lot of that stuff is kind of lost, lost in
yeah.
time, been overshadowed by, you know, other people and their stupid ideas. But yes, apparently fairies are very attracted to my energy because they like it, because I'm lighthearted and bright, apparently, according to them. So yay. Which is ironic considering, you know, I'm sometimes amazed that I'm basically an optimist. All evidence to the contrary, I still have a huge optimistic streak, and it just seems really hard to get rid of that. I'm not trying to get rid of it for sure, but I just find it ironic considering the life experiences that I had for the first half of my life. And we're going to be together for our anniversary is coming up, and it'll be 33 years since we got married.
Yep.
And
neither of us expected that.
And 34 years since we met, pretty much this year. And I'm 75, so another few years and half of my life will have been spent with you, which is awesome. I like that. Yeah. Much better half of the life than the one before.
Oh, me too. Absolutely.
Yes, is great.
If I had met you, I'd have ended up in a horrible place and probably wouldn't be alive now. I really believe that.
Same here. Carla says, what a lovely thing to learn, a fairy star. Jay says, wish you would do more videos on fairies as they remain such a mystery. Well, I've done a bunch and talked about them a bunch of times. It's like, you know, I'm not sure exactly what else to say. And when new ones come up, I talk about them too. So, and it's like, you know, they're another life form out there, and people have experiences with them. I like, I was talking about Iceland this morning, and how in Iceland you can't build in certain areas because they've made a treaty with the fairy folk, and this particular hill of rocks is their houses, and you can't touch them, which is very confusing for Western entrepreneurs who wanted to build like giant buildings and stuff like that to promote tourism. Anyway, so Gabrielle says, yeah, you have hope. It's a great quality. Jay says, happy 33rd. Thank you. Carla says, ah. Ickle says, congratulations, you too. Thank you. Gary says, what do you think about connecting to a specific type of fae, such as elves, for example? Do you think they group themselves together or have regions? I don't know. I mean, there's going to be different types wherever you are, because each one has got their own job. There's like the nature spirits, and then there's the overall larger fae that are in charge of those smaller nature spirit fae, and you know, regionally, and it depends on the plants that they're associated with, or the area of the planet they're associated with, or how high up, I guess, in the energetic hierarchy that they go. Like the Shi are kind of at the top of that chain, I think, because they're like the more ancient, larger beings. The ones that I've seen anyway, they got the long white hair and they're very tall and thin. They're at least as big as, if not taller than, an average person. Um, and so, like, there's all this huge range in between. So, I don't know. Look for the, I guess, stories in the area that you live in to see if you can get a clue as to what might be in your area. Carla says, happy anniversary. Darling says, happy anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia says, they have something like that in Ireland too, or maybe used to. Shay says, hooray for the sensible people of Iceland, human and fae alike. Charity says, congratulations, good parental leaders for staying married for 33 years. And actually, we helped my granddaughter because she's lived with us long enough now. She knows that communication between two people is actually possible without yelling and screaming. So this has been a really good lesson for her to see it firsthand. When she first came to live with us, she was sure that I was a crazy, horrible person because that's what her grandfather told her. And I was like, this evil bitch that hated everybody and was very judgmental. And she's learned otherwise by being with us and seeing firsthand who I actually am. And she had like a bit of a thing with the guy she's with right now that started off going into like a conflict, typical kind of conflict where everybody was upset and yelling. And she realized that it was an opportunity for a communication where they could actually have a conversation about it. And so they started actually talking about it and delving into one another's communication styles and triggers and stuff like that. And it was a completely different experience for her. She's never actually had that happen before. So I was quite pleased that she has absorbed that information by just being here. And
it's raining.
It's raining. Wow, okay. Pickle says, you just unlocked a memory. I could draw a 7-pointed star before I could draw a pentagram. My grandma was so annoyed with me that I was overcomplicating a simple star. Well, congratulations. I have a heck of a time drawing a 7-pointed star all by itself. I have to like look at the star and draw it that way. It's like,
well, you can't imagine how much it was to figure out the sigillum de ameth.
Oh yeah, that was something else.
Show people quick if we still have it.
Oh yeah, we still have it. It should be right over there.
As we're talking about geometrical stars and things, my version of the sigillum de ameth, or however much you can manage to see it on there, I don't know.
I have to look around to see where I'm getting it. Okay, here's the top part, yeah. And then there's the bottom part, and I helped to paint it all. Side.
That should be a 7-pointed star in there, I think, isn't it? But it's an interlaced. Yeah. That's a 7-pointed interlaced star there.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
All right. There you go. Yeah, that was quite the job. Between that and the tablets, the elemental tablets, that I painted all of them. It was really quite a thing. Yeah, that's pretty cute. So Shay says, very cool, Ickle. Those are challenging to draw. Yari says, thank you and happy anniversary. I'm new to the channel. Well, welcome to the channel. We always like having new people around.
Thanks for your participation.
Yep. Carla says, wow, Ian. Ickle says, wow, that's beautiful. Darling says, nice. Yep. It was, we did all of them. We did the 4 elemental, the watchtowers of the elements, and the sigillum de ameth, and then the spirit tablet. So I guess that's 6. The spirit tablet is little, though. Carla says, I have trouble drawing a stick figure. And Shay says that Carla will laugh out loud. Yeah, well, there was a lot of drawing definitely going on. Geometric shapes in that case, and a lot of sigils and names and letters and things and whatnot, and figuring it out.
One of these days I got to get back to that. It was one of my interests, but then I got totally absorbed in Barden stuff.
Well, now that you've gotten more
Yeah.
of the Barden stuff, going back to this should be an interesting shift.
If I want to take time away from the Barden stuff in my own development, I
Yeah.
don't know that I do, but it might be interesting for the channel. I think it would draw some people in, probably more people.
Oh, Carlos says Shay laughing. Yep. We all have different skill sets. What can I say? I can draw a stick figure, but that's about it.
Well, that was all mechanical, so that's more like figuring out taking a ruler and a protractor and figuring out stuff. It's not really artistic. It's mechanical process.
So,
Doesn't mean it's easy.
so Gaga says, how accurate are tarot cards? Depends on who's reading them and how well you understand what the symbolism means and whether or not you can actually apply it to your own life and accept the meanings whether you like them or not.
They can be very, very accurate. It depends almost entirely on the person using them and if they know what they're doing and if they have a good, especially if a person has a natural good intuition, a natural good clairvoyance, then they can really make really good use of them. The people that are best can get the meaning out of them and go beyond the cards through their clairvoyance and intuition.
Yeah, a lot of times you can use it as like a platform for allowing your clairvoyant abilities to blossom because it gives you something tangible to hang it on and can help to short circuit the fear that people sometimes have of having this ability. And so if they can say it's the cards that are doing it, not me, that can free up that part of your subconscious to not worry so much about
So
what you're doing.
they can be totally accurate or it can be totally wrong, and it depends. So much depends on the interpretation of the cards and the ability of the person who's doing them and doing the reading to be able to pick up on situations with the other person, pick up on their energy and feel where they're at and focus that into the tarot reading and stuff. So unfortunately, they're not mechanical. I mean, they are mechanical, but to interpret it right takes human interpretation. I played around with things on computers, supposedly computer tarot readings and things, and I always found them useless.
I like the tangible.
Well, yeah, and I think they have to be interpreted by somebody who knows what they're doing because so much depends on the interpretation. They're symbols and they can show you the truth, but you got to be able to see that and read that.
Shay says, right, Ian, in between life and fixing cars and learning how to weld in a few days. Laugh out loud.
True.
Gabrielle
Yep.
says, can people get closer to source without losing our humanity? Eckhart Tolle makes it sound like people stop reincarnating at a certain point. Does that mean they're not human anymore?
No.
If we stop identifying with form, do we just become formless consciousness?
Well, you're kind of close. You're not far off, but it depends on what you mean by your humanity. The thing is that people don't get about the whole process, and that scares people as they talk about losing this or losing that from enlightenment. You can get closer to the source. The only thing you lose are your illusions. There are a lot of parts of ourself that we think are parts of ourself that are not, and that doesn't mean just objects. You stop identifying with all the objects. Maybe this will help if I take this approach. Okay, somebody might. We'll even take a child. They might get attracted to an object like a child's blanket, where they have a security blanket. They get really attached to it, and it's like part of them. If it's missing, they feel like they've lost part of themselves. Well, eventually you realize, you grow older and you realize that that wasn't part of yourself at all. That was just an illusion, and you no longer need it. Well, it's kind of the same thing with enlightenment and identifying, getting closer to the source. You're only losing things which you falsely identify with that you think are part of you and are not actually. So the only thing you really drop are your illusions and delusions. But a lot of people call that their humanity because, for example, if you lose, so say that, let's take that type of freedom. We'll go back to the collection of objects. um, people get into collecting things, and they want things, and they get into the money whole thing and building up. And got to have money for this and money for that, and then if they lose it, they're devastated. Um, but the things are not part of you. When you get beyond that, you realize you are not attached to things. So that the idea being that if you lose something, that's fine and it doesn't bother you. But you can have all the things that you can have with money, and you can enjoy them and be fine with them. But if you're not identifying with them, they're not part of you. So if you lose them, no biggie. And if you take that to other aspects, like your ego and the things that you think, and if people hurt your ego, people insult your pride, well, this is moving to the point where you realize that that pride is not of you, that ego is not part of you. So insulting it doesn't bother you anymore, and insulting your pride doesn't bother you anymore because you realize that's not part of you. So it's kind of the same way. It's a developmental stage where the parts of you drop off that you realize are not yours and you don't need. So you don't need to worry about using your humanity or losing your individuality or anything like that. It reaches a point where those things that are useless to you drop off. So what you're losing is the false parts of you. So in reality, you're becoming more human. You're becoming more who you really are, and you're losing the false attributes that people think are part of them, are attached to them. So it's a moment of freeing yourself. And speaking of Eckhart Tolle, he talks about the peace he's attained because of that. Well, you don't have contention anymore. If you reach that state, you're peaceful about things changing around you. Um, a woman thought he was crazy once because she went to rent his house and he was too easygoing. And then she got scared, and so she changed his mind, renting a room in his house. And she got scared of him and changed her mind because she was scared because he was too quiet and easygoing. And so then he just said, okay, and had no reaction and gave her money back like it was no problem. And she expected him to be upset, which freaked her out even more until she realized. And then she rented the room for him anyway, and she ended up renting it for a couple of years. And after a couple of years, she came down and told him, he said, that he was too weird, that she was afraid he was going to attack her in the middle of the night because he was too unlike normal human beings, because he didn't get bothered by all this stuff because he was free of ego and self-reflection and all that stuff. And he became more himself. He lost all the stuff that society imposes on us and that we impose upon ourselves and we think are part of us. So in no way it's not like losing your humanity, or should be nothing scary about it. It's just that how it's misinterpreted makes it be scary to people. When in reality, it's finding your true self, your real self, who you really are all along, and losing your illusions and things. And some illusions help people. People are people have illusions about things. Part of them protects them from certain things by making certain illusions and delusions in their mind, which protects their ego and stuff. So it can be scary losing all those things. So there can be a lot of fear behind it. But in reality, it's just a freeing experience. That's my opinion. I'm sorry to have gone on so long about that.
That's okay. Gabrielle says, I see, that makes sense. So we'll go back to Jay. Jay says, what are some of your favorite stones, crystals that you have worked with, which have affected you profoundly? Well, clearly, amethyst is one of the stones. Why I ended up starting the Amethyst Crystal Web Project. So that would be a given, that the amethyst has, profoundly affected me and has become a big part of my life. But there's a lot of stones I really like a lot and that are useful for different purposes. Like I'm attracted, I have a lot of different stones. I like selenite a lot because it's really good for projecting light energy and for relaxing, getting rid of inflammation in the body and other things. I've got mostly every stone out there, well, most of the stones anyway, at least the version of them, in my room. And like I use a tiger eye or labradorite when I want to reflect things away from me, for different purposes depending on how I charge them up. Garnet is my birthstone. and I have several different garnets for different reasons for that. I like emeralds. I mean, it's just, I like rocks. Uh, yeah, I've got some nice, I like the celestite. I've got a bunch of that. I like the different energies that they have, so I really can't say I have one that's absolutely favorite and so forth. So Gabrielle says, so being ego identified is not a bad thing. It's just a stage of development that drops off as we expand.
Exactly. That's how I feel about it. And it seems to be, as far as I know, that's the truth of the matter.
And Star says, great opinion. And Gabrielle says, yeah, I still need some delusional thinking. Yeah, well, it can help. I mean, it's like you don't have to get rid of these things until you feel ready.
Well, yeah, and
when they drop off naturally, then it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not an effort. It's just something that kind of happens as you develop.
I think that's the best way. Now, if you talk the Indian stuff, some of them get not Native Americans, but Indians from India. They get
India.
very severe about some of it and making people give away everything and give away all their belongings. But I think that's a bad approach, and it doesn't. I don't think it directly leads to that attachment or that detachment from things that they want to accomplish. I think you need to accomplish that naturally. I think forcing it only leads to people wanting and desiring things and having a great need to find them. And
well, if they're not ready to give it up,
well, exactly,
then they're going to be focused on it all the time.
Yeah. So that's the asceticism has to be considered carefully before embarking on any of these aesthetic practices. I think it's better to let things, grow, encourage the growth and let it happen naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of people have these as questions because it's
well, yeah,
identity is an important thing for us. It's something that we build a thing around, definitely. As far as reincarnating or not, I think that becomes a choice at some point in your spiritual development, whether you're going to reincarnate or not. You can decide if you want to hang out with the other spirits that aren't coming back, and or you can come back. So
yeah, I don't have a personal opinion on that one. I'm going to wait and see what happens, I guess, or until I get advanced enough that I can tell. But moment.
Well, it helps that I remember being here.
At the moment, I just accept Barton's opinion on it. But yeah.
Jono says, thanks for the stream, everyone. Obviously, especially Siofra and Ian. I hope you have an awesome week. Thank you for the visa stuff and spiritual guidance. Ian, you're a boss for the welding. Very nice.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, since we started late, we're still trying to go for an hour and a half, so we've got 7 minutes left.
Okay.
We can wait.
Good time for any last questions.
Yeah, Carlos says, I've decided this is my last trip to this realm.
Well, I hope so for myself. I don't need to go through that stuff again. Had enough of that when I was younger. Don't need it anymore. I'm done with it. Hopefully, we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens, because you can decide it's your last trip, and then you die and you change your mind. But like, I'm not ready yet. I have more to learn.
Well, I do have more to learn, but I'll tell you, I don't want to go through that stuff again. The problem is growing up to learn it. Boy, when you had a rotten childhood,
it can be a challenge. There's no doubt about it.
Do I want to go through that again? No, I do not.
I certainly didn't care for it either, as far as that goes. Carlos says, I know, right?
Yep.
Yep. That's kind of the way things go. But I'm glad that more people are participating in the Amethyst Crystal Web. I think the more people that do that, the better as far as it goes, and adding to it.
That's a good public way to help things in general,
It's like, well, this is some important year. We've got 7 years since we started the Crystal Web and 33 years since we got hitched. And, it's like both good numbers. And 34 years since we met, so that is like another 7, right? We can get into the numerology of it all. Lots of 7s in there. Gabrielle says, Earth gets a 1-star review.
Yep.
It depends on what part of it you're on. I think it gets a 5-star review for most of the life forms that aren't human. I think it's the humans that get the 1-star review,
I have to agree.
not
Yes,
life
the Earth
itself.
is fine and great. It's what.
Yeah,
It's all the people are the problem.
the
Yeah.
Earth doesn't deserve that. It's doing what it's supposed to, and it's doing a good job. Donna says, that's interesting, Carla. Ian and me are hoping for Valhalla or whatever the hell isn't this place. Siofra is cursed. She's going to be here forever. I am not cursed. It's just that if everybody leaves and nobody comes back, who's going to be left, right, to teach anybody anything? Julia says, my ultimate hope is that I have a nice long break from this plane of life and that I will be able to retain a great deal of what I've learned in this life, both religious, spiritual, and otherwise. Yeah.
Yep.
Gabrielle says, yeah, Earth, like, y'all are the crazy ones. It's true. And Carla says, let me tell you what, next month, if I feel the least bit sleazy, I'm setting an alarm, or sleepy.
Sleazy.
I don't know how that came out. Sleepy. I'm setting an alarm. And Gabrielle says, don't blame me. Teresa says, if you love our dear mother who is Earth, you will return. Julia says, in my next life on this planet, I mean. Nicholas says, I want to come back a bunch more times. All right, I'll see you then. And Gaga says, I heard some races don't have souls, just a spirit like the animals. That being, they can't go to the higher realms after death. What's your take? I think that's a stupid idea, and it has absolutely no basis whatsoever in reality and leads to white supremacy. I'm against it completely. That's my take. Carla says, laugh my effing ass off. That is a justification for treating other people as inferior and different and isn't true. We are all human beings. There is only one human race. So there is no such thing as other races. We are all the same genome. We just have different skin colors, skin types, and stuff that are regionally created by where we grew up and where our ancestors came from. So that's it. Gabrielle says, keep his sleazy. It's from a good place. Carla says, we're bringing Siofra with Jana. Woohoo! Star says, I'm new here. Thanks for the live stream. It was great. Happy Mother's Day, Siofra. Thanks, Ian. Thank you all. I think it's a good time to stop. And, this is just my opinion, obviously, but I'm very strong on my opinions. So everybody have yourself a great week. And if you have questions, you can contact me at shifrasmagicalcove@gmail.com. And you can certainly check out any of the 400 plus videos that I already have up on YouTube, especially if you're new to the channel.
Well, for my take, I believe animals have souls. So.
Well, that's not the question. Gaga says peace. Darling says blessed be. All right, off we go as soon as Ian finishes. Oh, he did. Blessed be everyone. Okay, guys, thanks for being here. Have a blessed week, all. Thank you for the live. Lovely to listen to you as always. And Teresa says blessed be. Bye.